The glow of the monitor was the only light in the room, painting my face in a pale, shifting blue. It was well past midnight. Outside, the steady Oregon rain whispered against the windowpanes, a familiar sound that usually soothed me. But not tonight. Tonight, it sounded like a secret I couldn't keep. On the screen, hundreds of photos were laid out in a digital grid. A sea of faces. One face, mostly. Avery's. Avery at the beach, the wind catching her long brown hair. Avery in front of a waterfall, a hesitant, almost smile on her lips. Avery with her younger sisters, Lily and Chloe, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. My finger traced the outline of her face on the screen, a face that was becoming as familiar to me as my own, yet remained a landscape I couldn't fully map. "Are you sure about this, Sarah?" Mark's voice, low and laced with sleep, made me jump. I hadn't heard him come in. He stood in the doorway of my home office, his silhouette framed by the dim hallway light. He wasn't looking at the screen, but at me. He knew. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice a little too sharp. I minimized the window, a pointless gesture. He walked over and stood behind my chair, his hands resting gently on my shoulders. "All of this," he said, his gaze finally falling on the mosaic of images. "It might just make things worse." I clicked on a single photo, enlarging it. It was a candid shot. Avery was looking away from the camera, at the ocean. For a single, unguarded moment, the tension in her shoulders was gone. She looked peaceful. She looked like a 12-year-old girl on vacation, not a survivor carrying the weight of a world she didn't ask for. "I just want her to feel like she belongs here, Mark," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "I want her to look at the walls of this house and see herself. Not just a guest. Family." He squeezed my shoulders, a gesture of comfort that felt heavy with unspoken concern. "I know you do," he said softly. "But belonging isn't something you can frame and hang on a wall." His words hung in the air long after he had gone back to bed, echoing the doubt that was already nesting in my own heart. I turned back to the screen, to Avery's face, and wondered if I was trying to build a home for her, or just trying to quiet the ghosts of my own past. That was last night. This morning, the house was a symphony of chaos, the kind I had grown to love. Lily, who is 5 going on 15, was directing her 4-year-old sister, Chloe, in a complicated dance routine that involved a lot of spinning and narrowly avoided our coffee table. The smell of toast and coffee filled the kitchen, a stark contrast to the sterile silence of my office a few hours earlier. "Mommy, watch me. I'm a ballerina," Chloe shouted, wobbling precariously on one foot. "You're a beautiful ballerina, sweetie," I said, turning the pancakes before they burned. Avery appeared at the top of the stairs. She had a way of moving that was both silent and heavy, as if she was trying to take up as little space as possible while still making her presence felt. She was wearing an oversized black hoodie, the hood pulled up over her hair, and a pair of ripped jeans. It was her uniform, her armor against the world. "Morning," she mumbled, sliding into a chair at the kitchen island, away from her sister's whirlwind of activity. "Morning, Avies. Pancakes?" I offered, trying to keep my voice light and casual. She shrugged, her eyes fixed on her phone. A shrug was a good day. It was better than a silent headshake or a flat-out, no. In the 6 months she'd been with us, I'd learned to read the subtle language of her moods. A shrug was a hesitant yes. I slid a plate in front of her. She poked at the pancake with her fork but didn't eat. My heart did a familiar little dip. It was a constant dance, this relationship with her. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. She'd been with us for 6 months, but it felt like a lifetime and no time at all. She was the daughter of my best friend, Jessica. My Jessica, who was gone now. Her and her husband, taken in a blur of headlights and twisted metal on a slick highway 4 years ago. Avery was only 8. My chest tightened, the grief still a raw, physical thing. I had promised Jessica on the day Avery was born that I would always look out for her. It was a light-hearted, godmotherly promise made over a baby blanket and celebratory cake. Neither of us could have imagined it would become a promise I'd have to keep like this. After the accident, Avery was passed around. An aunt in Arizona, a grandfather in Florida, a cousin in Texas. Each one promised a forever home, and each one, for reasons I tried desperately to understand, broke that promise. She was a package shipped from one life to another, the label of unwanted stamped deeper with every move. When her last placement fell through, Mark and I didn't hesitate. We couldn't. She was Jessica's daughter. She was supposed to be with us. But bringing her here hadn't been the magical fix I'd envisioned. The trauma had sunk its roots deep into her soul, manifesting as what the therapists called abandonment issues. I called it a constant, heartbreaking test. She would push, she would lash out, she would retreat into impenetrable silence, all to see if we would be the next ones to give up on her. She'd run away twice already, both times found within hours, huddled at a bus stop, her small backpack filled with nothing but a change of clothes and a worn-out photograph of her parents. Each time, a piece of my heart had shattered. "These are good," Avery said, her voice so quiet I almost missed it. She had taken a small bite of the pancake. I turned from the sink, a smile blooming on my face. "Oh. Good. I'm so glad." The warmth that spread through my chest was ridiculously out of proportion to the compliment, but I didn't care. It was a crack of light in the fortress she kept around herself. Later that day, while the little ones were napping and Avery was holed up in her room with her music, I walked down the main hallway. This was my wall of memories. There were photos everywhere. A professional shot of a newborn Lily, swaddled and sleeping. Chloe, face smeared with chocolate cake on her first birthday. A family photo of the four of us at the pumpkin patch last fall, all bundled in scarves and laughing. Pictures of our wedding, of trips we took before the kids, of our life. Our life before. There wasn't a single photo of Avery on the wall. Not one. We had her official school picture, a stiff, awkward photo where she looked like a deer in headlights. She'd made me promise not to put it up. "I look like a convict," she'd said, and I couldn't argue. Any time I tried to take a casual picture of her, she would turn away, hide her face, or throw up a hand. It was a reaction as instinctive as breathing. The wall felt wrong. It felt like a lie. It told a story of a family of four, a happy, complete little unit. But we were a family of five now. This empty space where her face should be was a testament to our failure to fully integrate her, to make her feel seen. It screamed that she was still on the outside looking in. That's when the idea, which had been simmering for weeks, solidified into a plan. A mission. We needed a vacation. A real one. Somewhere beautiful, somewhere we could all be together, away from the routines and the pressures of daily life. And on that vacation, we would make new memories. We would take pictures. Not just any pictures. We would take beautiful, happy, undeniable photos of our family. All five of us. I went back to my office, the residual glow of last night's photo session still on the screen. I started searching. Not for hotels in Disneyland or a resort in Mexico. I wanted something closer to home, something that felt like us, like Oregon. I found a small, charming coastal town a few hours away called Seaside Pines. It had rugged beaches, hiking trails that led to hidden waterfalls, and a quiet, peaceful vibe. It was perfect. I booked a cozy rental house for a week at the end of the month. Then I did the thing that felt most important. I opened another tab and searched for photographers in the Seaside Pines area. I found a woman whose portfolio was filled with soft, natural light and candid family moments. I sent her an email. "Hi," I wrote. "My family and I will be in town from the 28th. We'd love to book a family photo session. But I have a special request. I'd also like to book a separate, individual session for my oldest daughter. It's important. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. A wave of relief washed over me. This was it. This was the answer. I would give her a set of pictures so beautiful she couldn't possibly hate them. Pictures of just her, showing her how we saw her, strong, lovely, and so incredibly wanted. We would fill the empty spaces on our walls and in our lives. That evening, I told Mark the plan. We were sitting on the couch after the kids were in bed, the house finally quiet. I booked a week at the coast, I said, trying to sound casual. A little town called Seaside Pines. I thought we could all use a change of scenery. He smiled, reaching for my hand. That sounds amazing, honey. Really. The girls will love it. I think Avery will, too. There are some great hiking trails. Yeah, that's a great idea. He paused, his thumb stroking the back of my hand. You seem better today. Lighter. I took a deep breath. I also booked a photographer. His smile didn't falter. Okay. Getting a family photo where everyone is looking at the camera and no one is crying is a worthy goal. Well, a family session, yes. But I also booked a separate session just for Avery. The motion of his thumb stopped. He didn't pull his hand away, but I felt a subtle shift in his posture. Just for Avery? He asked, his voice neutral. Yes, I said, my own voice suddenly defensive. Mark, we have hundreds of photos of Lily and Chloe. We have nothing of Avery. Nothing good. She hates having her picture taken, I know, but maybe if it's a professional, if she feels special maybe she'll let her guard down. I want her to have pictures of herself that she loves. I want us to have them. To put on the wall. So it finally looks like she lives here. I could see the gears turning in his head. Mark is an engineer, he sees the world in systems and logic. He processes, analyzes, and then concludes. I held my breath, waiting for the conclusion. Okay, he said finally, nodding slowly. Okay, I get it. If you think it will help, then it's a great idea. I let out the breath I was holding. Thank you. Of course, he said, pulling me closer. I want her to be happy, too, Sarah. You know that. I did know that. But as I leaned my head against his shoulder, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were looking at the same problem through two completely different lenses. He saw a family that needed to find its balance. I saw a wound that I was desperate to heal, and I was convinced this trip, these photos, were the only medicine that would work. I just had to make Avery take it. The week leading up to the trip was a flurry of activity. I threw myself into the planning with a fervor that bordered on obsessive. I researched tide pools, the best times to visit the waterfalls, and even found a little ice cream shop in Seaside Pines that was famous for its homemade huckleberry flavor. I wanted every detail to be perfect, a meticulously crafted experience of happiness. Mark watched me with a quiet, observant eye. He helped, packing the car and making sure the girls' rain boots were ready, but he stayed on the periphery of my whirlwind of planning. He was the anchor, and I was the kite, soaring on the winds of my own high expectations. Telling the girls was an event in itself. Lily and Chloe reacted with the predictable, shrieking delight of small children promised a beach. They ran in circles, chanting, "Vacation. Vacation," until they were dizzy. Telling Avery was a more delicate operation. I found her in her room, sitting on her window seat, staring out at the rain-soaked street. The ever-present headphones were on, a barrier between her and the world. I tapped gently on her doorframe. She pulled one side of the headphones off, her expression impassive. "Hey," I said, leaning against the door. "So, I have some news. We're all going on a little trip next week. To the coast." She didn't say anything. She just watched me, waiting. "It's a place called Seaside Pines," I continued, my voice overly bright. There's a beach, and forests, and some really cool hiking trails I thought you might like. A shrug. Okay. And, one of the days we're there, we're going to take some family pictures. On the beach. I braced myself for the protest, the automatic rejection. She just nodded slowly. Okay. This was too easy. A flicker of suspicion went through me. And I also thought, since we don't have any really nice pictures of you, that I'd get the photographer to take some of just you. If you want. You could wear whatever you like. We could make it really cool. I held my breath. She looked down at her hands, twisting a loose thread on the sleeve of her hoodie. For a long moment, the only sound was the faint tinny beat of the music from her headphones. Fine, she said, finally looking up. There was no enthusiasm in her voice, but there was no defiance either. There was just resignation. As if this was just another strange thing the adults in her life had decided for her, and it was easier to go along with it than to fight. Great. I said, my relief making my voice loud. It's going to be fun, Avies. I promise. She gave me a look that said she'd heard that promise before, and then she slid the headphone back over her ear. The conversation was over. I backed out of the room, my heart a confusing mix of victory and unease. I had gotten her to agree. But the look in her eyes haunted me. It wasn't the look of a girl excited for a special photo shoot. It was the look of someone bracing for an ordeal. The drive to Seaside Pines was a typical family road trip. Lily and Chloe started asking, "Are we there yet?" before we'd even left our Portland neighborhood. Mark put on a playlist of kids' movie soundtracks, and I spent most of the drive passing out snacks and mediating disputes over who was looking out whose window. Avery was a silent island in the back seat, headphones firmly in place, the world outside the car window scrolling past her, unseen. But when we finally pulled up to the rental house, even Avery seemed to thaw a little. It was a charming, weathered cedar shake house, nestled in a grove of tall pine trees, the salty smell of the ocean hanging heavy in the air. "I smell the beach!" Chloe yelled, scrambling out of her car seat. The house was even better inside. It had a big stone fireplace, cozy mismatched furniture, and a huge picture window that looked out over the windswept dunes towards the ocean. "I call this room," Avery said, pointing to a small loft bedroom accessible by a spiral staircase. It was the first spark of genuine excitement I had seen from her all day. "It's all yours," I said, my heart soaring. Maybe this would work. Maybe this place had a little magic in it. The first few days were a blur of activity. We flew kites on the beach, the wind whipping our hair and stealing our laughter. We explored tide pools, discovering starfish and tiny crabs. Lily and Chloe were in heaven, their pockets full of shells and smooth, gray stones. I made a point of having my camera with me at all times. I wasn't just a mom on vacation, I was a documentarian. A memory maker. I took pictures of everything. The little girls running from the waves. Mark lifting them both up, one on each arm. The whole family, in a slightly blurry selfie, our faces red from the wind. And I made a conscious effort to capture Avery. It was a delicate dance. If I was too obvious, she would shut down. So I became sneaky. I'd snap a photo when she was looking out at the horizon, lost in thought. I caught the small, genuine smile that touched her lips when a wave soaked her sneakers unexpectedly. I took a picture of her from behind as she expertly skipped a stone across the water, her form perfect. I was collecting these moments like treasures, proof that she was here, that she was part of this. One afternoon, we went hiking. The trail wound through a lush, green forest, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and pine. It led to a stunning waterfall that cascaded down a wall of mossy rock into a clear pool below. Lily and Chloe were awestruck. "It's a fairy waterfall," Lily whispered. It was the perfect backdrop. "Okay, everyone, picture time," I announced. The little ones groaned but complied. Mark herded them together. Avery, however, hung back. "Come on, Avies," I coaxed. "Get in the picture." "I don't want to," she said, her arms crossed. "Please. Just one. For me." I hated the pleading tone in my voice, but I couldn't help it. Mark stepped in. "It'll be quick, Avery. Then we can head back." His voice was calm and steady. She sighed, a dramatic, long-suffering sound, and trudged over to stand next to Mark. I raised the camera. Lily and Chloe were making goofy faces. Mark was smiling patiently. And Avery was looking at the camera, but her eyes were completely blank. She had perfected the art of being physically present while emotionally absent. It was a photo of 4 people and a ghost. My heart sank. I took the picture anyway. "Okay, great," I said, forcing a smile. "Now, Avery, can I just get one of you, right in front of the waterfall? It's so beautiful." "No," she said, the word flat and final. She turned and started walking back down the trail without another word. I stood there, the camera feeling heavy in my hands. Mark came over and put a hand on my arm. "Let it go, Sarah," he said quietly. "Don't push it." "I'm not pushing," I snapped, my disappointment making me defensive. "I just want one nice picture." "Is that so much to ask?" "For her, maybe it is," he said, his gaze following Avery's retreating figure. "You can't force a memory, you know." The photo shoot was scheduled for the next evening, our second-to-last day. The photographer, a kind-faced woman named Clara, met us on the beach at golden hour. The light was perfect, soft and warm, casting long shadows on the sand. The family portion of the shoot was challenging. Getting 3 kids, 2 of whom were under 6, to cooperate was an exercise in futility. Chloe decided she was terrified of the sand and refused to be put down. Lily was more interested in chasing seagulls than posing. Avery stood stiffly at the edge of the group, a reluctant participant in a play she hadn't auditioned for. Clara was a pro. She was patient and cheerful, suggesting games and prompts to get us to interact naturally. We ended up with some shots that I knew would be usable. Shots of us walking down the beach, holding hands. A shot of Mark tickling the little girls. They weren't perfect, but they were real. Then, it was time for Avery's session. "Okay, little ones," Clara said with a wink. "Your turn is over. You can go play with Dad now." Mark led Lily and Chloe down the beach to look for sand dollars, leaving me, Clara, and Avery alone. The mood shifted instantly. The forced cheerfulness evaporated, leaving a tense silence. "Okay, Avery," Clara said gently. "So your mom told me you're not a huge fan of having your picture taken. That's totally fine. Let's just forget about the camera. Why don't we just walk for a bit?" Avery shrugged, her hands shoved deep in her hoodie pockets. They started to walk along the shoreline. I stayed back, trying to be invisible. Clara talked to her in a low, soothing voice. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could see Avery's shoulders relax, just a little. Clara would occasionally lift her camera and take a few shots, quick and unobtrusive. She had Avery sit on a piece of driftwood. She had her trace her name in the sand. She never once told her to smile. Instead, she asked her about school, about her music, about what she thought of the ocean. And slowly, miraculously, Avery started to respond. She wasn't smiling, not really. But the hard, protective shell seemed to soften. For a few moments, I saw the girl underneath. The girl I knew was still in there, buried under layers of pain and fear. I felt a surge of triumphant hope. It was working. This was the right thing to do. After about 20 minutes, Clara gave me a nod. "I think we've got some beautiful shots," she said. Avery immediately retreated back into herself, the walls going up as soon as the session was officially over. She mumbled a thanks and walked over to join Mark and her sisters, leaving me alone with the photographer. "She's a beautiful girl," Clara said, packing her gear. "She has very old eyes." The comment struck me. "Yes," I said quietly. "She does." "The photos will be ready for you to view in an online gallery in a couple of days," she said. "I'll email you the link." The drive home was subdued. The post-vacation melancholy had set in. When we got home, the house felt strangely big and quiet. As we unpacked, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Soon, the gallery link would arrive. Soon, I could start the real project, filling the walls. 2 days later, the email from Clara arrived. My hands were trembling slightly as I clicked the link. A gallery of images loaded on my screen. I scrolled past the family photos first. They were good. As good as they could be. But my focus was elsewhere. I clicked on the folder labeled Avery. And there they were. Clara was an artist. She had captured it. The quiet strength in Avery's gaze as she looked out at the sea. The delicate line of her jaw. A candid shot where she was examining a seashell, her brow furrowed in concentration, completely unaware of the camera. And one photo made me gasp. She was looking directly at the camera. She wasn't smiling, but there was a softness in her expression, a flicker of vulnerability, of trust. It was the most honest, beautiful picture of her I had ever seen. This was it. This was the one. I spent the next hour downloading the images. I selected nearly all of Avery's individual shots and a handful of the best family ones. Then I uploaded them to a photo printing website and started filling my cart. 5x7s, 8x10s, and a beautiful 16 by 20 canvas print of the one perfect shot of Avery. I ordered frames, too. Sleek, simple black frames that would look perfect on our hallway wall. I was so absorbed in my project that I didn't notice Mark come up behind me until he spoke. "That's a lot of pictures," he said, looking over my shoulder at the online shopping cart. "I know," I said, beaming. "Aren't they amazing? Clara did such a good job." He was silent for a moment, scrolling through the images I had selected. His expression was unreadable. "It looks like the only pictures you're getting are family shots, pictures of all 3 kids, or pictures of just Avery," he commented, his voice flat. "Well, yeah," I said, my good mood starting to dim. That was the whole point. I wanted pictures of her to put up. Right now, we only have pictures of our bio kids. This is to balance it out. To make it feel like her home, too. I expected him to agree. To see the logic, the love behind my actions. But he didn't. He straightened up, a frown creasing his forehead. "Sarah," he said, and the way he said my name sent a chill down my spine. "Don't you think this is a little much? When all these are framed and on the wall, what are Lily and Chloe going to think? It's going to look like this entire vacation was all about Avery." His words hit me like a splash of cold water. I stared at him, my mouth open. "What? No. That's not true. This is about making her feel included, not excluding them." "Is it?" he challenged, his voice quiet but firm. "Or is it about making you feel better? Look at this. You didn't order a single picture of just Lily, or just Chloe. You used to do that after every trip. It just seems unfair. And I'm worried it's going to backfire." The joy and triumph I had felt moments before curdled into a knot of defensive anger and doubt. I looked from his concerned face to the screen full of Avery's photos. I saw my mission, my act of love. He saw favoritism. And for the first time, a terrible question crept into my mind: was he right? The argument hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. Mark's words replayed in my head: unfair, backfire, all about Avery. They were accusations, and they stung because a small, traitorous part of me feared they were true. That's not what this is, I insisted, turning back to the computer screen as if the photos themselves could plead my case. This is about correcting an imbalance, Mark. The walls are covered in pictures of them. They've had their whole lives documented in this house. Avery has had 6 months. 6 months of us trying to convince her she's not temporary. This is a part of that. I understand that, he said, his voice softer now, but no less firm. He wasn't trying to fight, he was trying to make me see. That was always Mark's way. Calm, relentless logic. But Lily and Chloe are 4 and 5. They don't understand imbalance or correcting the past. They understand what's in front of them. And what they're going to see is a dozen new pictures of their sister and none of just them. They're going to wonder why she got a special photo shoot and they didn't. You know how they are. They'll think they did something wrong. I felt a pang of guilt. He was right about that. Lily was especially sensitive to perceived slights. Just last week, she had cried because I'd given Chloe the red cup and she'd wanted it, convinced it meant I loved Chloe more. How would she react to a whole wall of photos she wasn't the star of? It's not favoritism, I said, the words feeling weaker even to my own ears. It's targeted inclusion. Mark let out a short, humorless laugh. Targeted inclusion? Sarah, listen to yourself. You're making it sound like a corporate strategy. This is our family. You can't just force puzzle pieces together. They have to fit naturally. And how is that supposed to happen if we don't do anything? I shot back, my frustration boiling over. If we just sit back and wait for her to magically feel like she belongs? She's been passed around for years, Mark. Years. Everyone gave up. I am not going to be another person who just waits. I have to do something. Jessica would have, I stopped, my voice cracking. I couldn't finish the sentence. Bringing her up felt like a low blow, but the thought was always there, right under the surface. What would Jessica do? Mark's expression softened completely. He came over and wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my head. I know, he whispered into my hair. I know you're trying to do what's best. I just worry you're trying too hard. You're putting so much pressure on these pictures, to fix everything. And nothing can carry that much weight. I leaned back against him, closing my eyes. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to relax and trust the process. But the image of Avery's small backpack, packed and ready by the door, was seared into my brain. The memory of finding her at the bus station, looking so small and so lost, was a constant, driving fear. I felt like if I stopped trying, even for a second, she would slip through our fingers. Let's just see, I said quietly. Let's see how it goes. He sighed, a sound of resignation. Okay, Sarah. We'll see. The box of photos and frames arrived a week later. I opened it with a nervous flutter in my stomach. The prints were beautiful, even more vibrant and emotional than they had appeared on screen. The 16 by 20 canvas of Avery was breathtaking. Holding it in my hands, my conviction returned. This was right. This was a statement. A declaration of her permanence. That Saturday, while Mark took all 3 girls to the park, I began my project. I took down a few of the older photos of Lily and Chloe baby pictures that could be moved to an albumto make space. I laid everything out on the floor, planning the arrangement. The large canvas of Avery would be the centerpiece. The other photos Avery alone, Avery with her sisters, the whole family would radiate out from it, creating a new narrative on our wall. It took me 2 hours. When I was done, I stood back and surveyed my work. The hallway was transformed. It no longer told the story of a family of 4. It told the story of us, now. Avery's face was everywhere. Her quiet, thoughtful expression, her rare, unguarded moments. It was beautiful. It felt complete. I was so lost in my satisfaction that I didn't hear the front door open. Wow! It was Avery's voice. She was standing at the end of the hall, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Mark and the little girls were right behind her, their chatter dying down as they saw the wall. I held my breath, my eyes locked on Avery's face, searching for a reaction. Her eyes scanned the photos, lingering on the large canvas in the center. She didn't say anything else. Her face was a mask, completely unreadable. She just stared, her jaw tight. Then Lily's voice, small and confused, broke the silence. "Mommy? Where are my pictures?" Chloe, ever her sister's echo, chimed in. "Yeah. My pictures. They're right here, sweeties," I said quickly, pointing. "See? Here we all are on the beach. And here's you and Lily and Avery with Daddy." "But there's no picture of just me," Lily said, her lower lip beginning to tremble. She pointed a small finger at the canvas. "Why does Avery get a big picture and I don't?" My heart sank. Mark's prediction was coming true in real time. He shot me a look not of anger, but of pained empathy. "I told you so. That's because we have lots and lots of pictures of you and Chloe all around the house, honey," I tried to explain, my voice sounding weak and unconvincing. "We didn't have many of Avery, so we wanted to make sure she had some special ones, too." This explanation was far too complex for a 5-year-old. All Lily understood was the perceived injustice. Her face crumpled, and she burst into tears. "It's not fair," she wailed. Chloe, seeing her sister cry, immediately started crying too, a cascade of toddler misery. Amid the chaos of 2 wailing children, I looked at Avery. She was still staring at the wall, but her expression had changed. The mask had cracked, and underneath was a look of profound, gut-wrenching shame. She looked like she had been caught doing something terribly wrong. She looked exactly how Lily had accused her of being, the unfair favorite. The cause of the problem. Without a word, she turned and fled up the stairs to her room, the door slamming shut with a finality that echoed through the house. Mark scooped up a crying Chloe and looked at me over her head. "I'll handle this," he said, his voice strained. He carried Chloe into the living room, with Lily trailing behind, still sniffling. I was left alone in the hallway, surrounded by the beautiful, perfect photos that had just blown up my family. The silence from upstairs was more damning than any argument. I had wanted to make Avery feel seen, but instead, I had put her under a spotlight, isolating her in the worst possible way. I had made her the center of attention, and in doing so, I had made her a target. I went upstairs and knocked gently on her door. "Avery? Can I come in?" Silence. "Avies, please. Let's talk." More silence. I tried the doorknob. It was locked. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. "I'm sorry," I whispered, not knowing if she could even hear me. "I'm so sorry. I was just trying to. I messed up." The rest of the evening was excruciating. Mark managed to calm the little girls down with a movie and popcorn. Avery didn't come out of her room for dinner. I left a plate outside her door, but when I checked later, it was untouched. The new wall of photos loomed in the hallway, a monument to my failure. Every time I walked past, Avery's beautiful, sad eyes seemed to follow me, accusing me. That night, Mark and I talked in low, hushed tones in our bedroom. "You have to take them down, Sarah," he said. It wasn't a suggestion. "I can't," I argued, my voice barely a whisper. "If I take them down now, what does that say to her? That she was right? That she doesn't deserve a place on the wall? It will just prove her worst fear, that she's temporary. That she can be put up and taken down. And leaving them up is better," he countered. "Leaving them up is a constant reminder to everyone of what happened today. A reminder to Lily and Chloe that they were treated unfairly, and a reminder to Avery that her presence causes conflict. There's no winning here. You've created a no-win situation. He was right. I had backed us all into a corner. Any move I made now would be the wrong one. Taking them down would hurt Avery. Leaving them up would continue to alienate the little girls and fester like a wound in the family. I started, but I didn't know how to finish. I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. To fix the past. To earn Jessica's forgiveness. To build a perfect family out of broken pieces. I know what you wanted, Mark said, his anger gone, replaced by a deep weariness. But this isn't about you, Sarah. It's not about your guilt over Jessica. It's about a 12-year-old girl who needs stability, not grand gestures. She needs normal. And this, he said, gesturing vaguely towards the hallway, is not normal. His words were a punch to the gut. Your guilt over Jessica. He had never said it so plainly before, but we both knew it was the truth. My friendship with Jessica was a defining relationship of my life. We had met in college, two art students with big dreams. She was the bold one, the one who wasn't afraid to take risks. I was the cautious planner. When she met her husband and got pregnant with Avery, I was terrified for her. She just laughed. Life's an adventure, Sarah, she'd said. You just have to jump. When she died, a part of me died, too. The part that believed in jumping. My life became about safety, about planning, about controlling every possible outcome to avoid pain. Bringing Avery in was the biggest jump I had taken since, and I was terrified of failing. So I was trying to control it, to manage it, to produce a specific, perfect result. The next day was a Sunday. The house was shrouded in a tense, fragile quiet. Avery eventually emerged from her room, but she was a ghost. She didn't speak, didn't make eye contact. She moved through the house as if she were trying to be invisible. Lily and Chloe were wary of her, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, their conflict from the day before replaced by a confusing unease. I tried to talk to Avery again in the afternoon. I found her on the window seat in her room, headphones on, staring out the window. It was her default state, her safe place. I sat on the edge of her bed. She didn't acknowledge me. Avery, I began, my voice trembling slightly. I need you to know how sorry I am about the pictures. I never, ever wanted to make you feel uncomfortable or singled out. I look at you, and I see this amazing, strong, incredible person, and I wanted everyone to see it. I wanted the pictures to show you that you belong here. That this is your home, forever. She finally turned to look at me, her eyes dark and unreadable. She pulled her headphones down, letting them rest around her neck. You don't get it, she said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. Help me understand, then, I pleaded. She took a deep breath, and for the first time, she didn't just retreat. She spoke. All my life, she began, her voice low but steady, people have tried to make me fit. When I went to live with my Aunt Carol, she made me call her Mom. She threw out all my old clothes and bought me new ones, all pink and frilly. She said it was a fresh start. When I went to Grandpa's, he signed me up for cheerleading, even though I hate cheerleading. He said it would help me make friends and be normal. Everyone always has a project. And I'm the project. She looked from me to the hallway, where the photos were still hanging. Those pictures, they're just another project. It's not for me. It's for you. It makes you feel like you're doing a good job. Like you're fixing the broken girl. Her voice cracked on the last two words. But you're not. You're just reminding me that I'm broken. Her words were quiet, but they landed with the force of a physical blow. Every defense I had built up crumbled. The justifications, the good intentions, they all turned to dust. She saw right through me. She saw the guilt, the desperation, the need to make myself feel better by fixing her. And she was right. I had made her into a project. The unframeable girl. And my clumsy, selfish attempt to frame her had only shattered us all. The silence that followed Avery's words was heavy and absolute. Her quiet truth had dismantled every one of my defenses, leaving me raw and exposed. I'm the project. The phrase echoed in the space between us, a verdict I couldn't appeal. I looked at this child, this old soul in a 12-year-old's body, and saw for the first time the immense burden of my good intentions. I didn't see it that way, I stammered, the words feeling hollow and inadequate. Avery, I swear, I just love you. I want you to be happy. Then stop trying so hard, she said, her voice barely a whisper. She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them, making herself small. Just let me be. With that, she put her headphones back on, the universal signal that the conversation was over. The shield was back up. I walked out of her room feeling like a stranger in my own home. I had tried to build a bridge to her, but instead, I had built a wall. Downstairs, Mark was in the kitchen, making coffee. He looked at my face and knew. What did she say? He asked gently. I sank into a chair at the table, the full weight of my failure pressing down on me. I recounted the conversation, my voice thick with unshed tears. I told him every word. Everyone always has a project. And I'm the project. Mark listened without interrupting, his expression a mixture of sadness and understanding. When I finished, he came over and put a hand on my shoulder. She's not wrong, Sarah, he said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a simple, painful fact. I know, I whispered. What do I do now, Mark? I've made everything so much worse. For now, he said, sitting down across from me, we do nothing. We let the dust settle. We give her space. No more projects. No more grand gestures. We just live. We get back to normal. But what about the wall? I asked, gesturing toward the hallway. The photos felt like a toxic presence now, poisoning the air in the house. We'll deal with the wall, he said. But not today. Doing anything right now, taking them down or leaving them up, it's a statement. And we need to stop making statements. We need to start listening. The next few days were some of the most difficult I'd ever experienced. We lived in a house full of eggshells. Avery was more distant than ever, a silent shadow flitting between her room and the kitchen. She ate her meals quickly, her eyes downcast, and disappeared as soon as she was finished. Lily and Chloe, sensing the tension, were subdued and clingy. They would often stop in the hallway, look at the photos, and then look at me with confused, hurt eyes. The wall had become a symbol of our collective unhappiness. I tried to follow Mark's advice. I stopped trying. I focused on the mundane rhythm of daily life, laundry, meals, wiping up spills. I didn't push Avery to talk. I didn't ask her how her day was. I just said good morning and good night. I was trying to give her the space she'd asked for, but it felt like I was abandoning her all over again. The silence was a chasm between us, and I was terrified it was growing wider every day. About a week after the disastrous unveiling of the photos, I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I overheard Lily talking to Chloe in the living room. Avery's sad because of the pictures, Lily said in the self-important way of a 5-year-old explaining the world. Why? Chloe asked. Because mommy loves her more, Lily said matter-of-factly. That's why she got the big picture. It made her sad. My hands froze in the soapy water. I felt sick. This was the narrative my children were creating from my actions. That my love was a competition, a finite resource that had been unfairly distributed. And that Avery's sadness was a result of this supposed favoritism. It was so twisted, so far from the truth I had intended, yet it was the undeniable reality I had created. The breaking point came that Friday. I had a deadline for a design project, and I was in my office, trying to focus. Mark had taken the little girls to the library for story time. Avery was home from school, presumably in her room. The house was quiet. At some point, I realized it was too quiet. A prickle of unease ran up my spine. It was the same feeling I'd had the other times. I got up from my desk and went to her room. I knocked. Avery? No answer. Avies, I'm coming in. I turned the knob. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open. The room was empty. The window seat where she always sat was bare. Her school backpack was gone. On her perfectly made bed was a single, folded piece of paper. My blood ran cold. No. Not again. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely pick up the note. I unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, almost unnaturally so. I'm sorry. It's better this way. I don't belong here. The words blurred through my tears. A strangled sob escaped my lips. I ran through the house, my heart pounding against my ribs, calling her name. I checked the backyard, the garage. Nothing. She was gone. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed Mark. She's gone, I cried into the phone, the words tumbling out in a panicked rush. Avery's gone. She left a note. Okay, Sarah, calm down. Mark's voice was tense but steady, a lifeline in my storm of panic. Where are you? I'm on my way home. Did you call the police? No, not yet. I just found it. Call them. Now. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The next hour was a nightmare. I talked to a calm, professional 911 operator. 2 police officers arrived, their presence making the situation feel terrifyingly real. They asked questions I could barely answer. What was she wearing? Where might she go? Did she have any money? I showed them the note. I showed them the photos on the wall, trying to explain the context, feeling my shame deepen with every word. Mark arrived home, his face pale. He took over, answering the officers' questions with a clarity I couldn't muster. He told them about the bus station, the other times she'd run away. While one officer put out a bulletin, the other one, a woman with kind eyes named Officer Davis, sat with me at the kitchen table. You said this started after you put up the photos, she asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Teenagers are tough, she said. Especially kids with a history like hers. Sometimes, when you try to pull them close, they feel the pressure and they just snap. They run. It's not about you, not really. It's about them trying to take control of the one thing they can, themselves. Her words were meant to be comforting, but they only confirmed my failure. I had created the pressure that had made her snap. This was my fault. Mark and I spent the next few hours in a state of suspended animation, waiting by the phone. The house felt cavernous and empty. Lily and Chloe were at a neighbor's house, mercifully shielded from the unfolding crisis. Every car that drove down the street sent a surge of adrenaline through me. My mind raced, imagining the worst. Where was she? Was she safe? Was she scared? The image of her, a 12-year-old girl alone in the city, was unbearable. I paced the floor, walking the path from the living room to the hallway, where her face stared back at me from the wall. Her beautiful, sad eyes in the canvas print seemed to mock me. Look what you did. Finally, around 7 p.m., the phone rang. It was Officer Davis. We found her, she said. A wave of relief so powerful it made my knees weak washed over me. Is she okay? Where is she? She's safe. We found her at the downtown bus terminal. She bought a ticket to Eugene. It looks like she was trying to get to her grandfather's old address in Florida, one bus at a time. Florida. The place she'd been before the cousin in Texas. Another failed home. She wasn't running to something, she was just running away. "We're bringing her home," Officer Davis said. "She's not in any trouble, Mrs. Miller. She's just a scared kid." When the police car pulled into our driveway, my heart was hammering. Mark and I stood on the porch, waiting. The back door opened, and Avery climbed out. She looked so small, so fragile. She wouldn't look at us. She kept her eyes fixed on the ground as Officer Davis walked her to the door. "We'll leave you to it," the officer said to us with a meaningful look. "There will be a follow-up from social services, just standard procedure. You know the drill." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. We knew the drill. Avery stood in the entryway, her backpack still on, looking at the floor. The three of us were frozen in a triangle of unspoken pain and recrimination. The silence was deafening. I had imagined this moment 100 times in the last few hours. I had imagined running to her, hugging her, telling her how much we loved her. But looking at her now, I knew that was the last thing she needed. It would be another grand gesture, another act of my own emotional need. It was Mark who broke the silence. He didn't move towards her. He just spoke, his voice low and calm. "Are you hungry, Avery?" he asked. The question was so simple, so normal, it seemed absurd. But it was also perfect. It wasn't about love, or belonging, or forever. It was about right now. It was about a basic human need. Avery looked up, surprised. She glanced from Mark to me, her eyes wary. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. "Okay," Mark said. "I was thinking about making grilled cheese. The way you like it, with the tomato soup." He walked past her into the kitchen as if this were just any other Friday night. As if our world hadn't just cracked open and been hastily glued back together. He started pulling out the bread, the cheese, the butter. The familiar, comforting sounds of a simple meal being made filled the oppressive silence. I stayed where I was, my eyes on Avery. She hadn't moved. She was watching Mark, a flicker of confusion in her expression. This wasn't the reaction she was used to. There was no yelling, no crying, no dramatic declarations. There was just grilled cheese. Slowly, hesitantly, she slid her backpack off her shoulders and let it drop to the floor. She walked over to the kitchen island and climbed onto a stool, the same one she had sat on the morning I first told her about the trip. She didn't speak. She just watched her stepfather make her a sandwich. I knew, in that moment, that something had to change. But it wasn't her. It was me. My project to fix Avery was over. It had failed in the most spectacular way possible. Now, new, much harder project had to begin, fixing myself. And it started with that hallway. After Avery had eaten her grilled cheese in silence and retreated to her room, this time leaving the door slightly ajar, I went to the garage. I found a hammer and a box. I walked back to the hallway, my heart heavy with a strange mix of grief and resolve. I looked at the wall, at all my carefully curated, beautifully framed intentions. Then, one by one, I started taking them down. The sound of the first nail being pulled from the drywall was unnaturally loud in the quiet house. It was a sharp, screeching sound, like a cry of protest. I flinched, but I didn't stop. I set the first frame, a 5x7 of Avery on the beach, face down on the floor. Then I moved to the next one. And the next. Mark came and stood in the doorway of the living room, watching me. He didn't say a word. He just leaned against the frame, his arms crossed, his presence a silent form of support. He understood that this was something I had to do alone. This was my mess to clean up, my grand gesture to dismantle. I worked methodically, my movements precise. I took down the family photos, the shots of the three girls together, the candid moments I had been so proud of. The wall began to look wounded, pockmarked with empty nail holes and lighter squares of paint where the frames had shielded the wall from the faint fade of time. It was an ugly, visible scar. Finally, only the centerpiece remained, the large 16 by 20 canvas of Avery. Her face, so full of quiet vulnerability, looked out at me. This was the photo I had loved the most, the one that I believed held the power to heal. Now, it just looked like an accusation. It was the heaviest of all, both in weight and in meaning. As I lifted it off its hook, the finality of the act settled in my stomach. The wall was officially blank. My project was officially over. I carefully placed the canvas in the empty cardboard box on top of the other frames. I didn't want to break them. This wasn't about destroying the images, it was about removing the weight I had placed upon them. They were just photographs, moments in time. I was the one who had turned them into weapons. When I was done, I stood in the empty hallway, surrounded by the ghosts of my good intentions. The bare wall felt both like a relief and a terrible loss. I had failed. Completely and utterly. What are you going to do with them? Mark asked, his voice gentle. I don't know, I said, looking at the box. Put them in the attic, I guess. For now. He nodded. Come on, he said, walking over and taking my hand. Let's leave it for tonight. He led me into the living room and pulled me down onto the couch, holding me while I finally let the tears come. They weren't the panicked, hysterical tears from before. They were quiet tears of grief, for my friend Jessica, for the pain I had caused her daughter, and for the perfect family I had tried and failed to manufacture. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The desperate need to do something had been replaced by a quiet imperative to be something, patient, present, and calm. The social worker, a kind but no-nonsense woman named Maria, came by that afternoon. It wasn't our first meeting with her. She had been Avery's case manager through the last 2 placements and had overseen her transition to our home. She sat at our kitchen table, a file open in front of her. Avery sat with us, at my insistence. No more talking about her without her present. Maria's gaze swept over the 3 of us. So, she said, her voice neutral. Avery tells me she felt overwhelmed. I took a deep breath. This was it. No excuses. No justifications. Just the truth. She was right to feel that way, I said, looking directly at Maria, but speaking the words for Avery. I made a mistake. A big one. I was trying to force her to feel like she belonged, and instead, I made her feel like a project. I put a huge amount of pressure on her, and on our whole family. Her running away that was a direct result of my actions. It was my fault. Avery, who had been staring at her hands, flickered her eyes up at me for a fraction of a second. It was the first time she had looked at me all day. Maria nodded slowly, making a note in her file. It takes a lot to admit that, Sarah. She turned her attention to Avery. Avery, what do you need from Sarah and Mark right now? The question hung in the air. Avery shrank in on herself, shrugging her shoulders. The familiar wall was still there, but I could see a tiny crack in it. Okay, Maria said, not pushing. Let's talk about a plan. I think it's time we scheduled some family therapy sessions. All 5 of you. Not just for Avery. This is about how a family learns to live together, how it adapts to change. It's about creating a new system that works for everyone. Yes, I said immediately. Absolutely. Whatever it takes. Mark agreed without hesitation. We looked at Avery. She gave another small shrug, which we had all learned was her reluctant form of consent. The first therapy session was awkward and painful. It was held in a small, comfortable office with a therapist named Dr. Evans. He was a calm, older man with a soothing voice. He started by asking each of us to describe our family in one word. Mark said, trying. I said, complicated. When it was Avery's turn, she was silent for a long time. Finally, she whispered, loud. It was a strange, unexpected word. Dr. Evans leaned forward. What do you mean by loud, Avery? She looked at me, at the desperation that she must have seen in my eyes every day. She looked at Lily and Chloe, at their boisterous, chaotic energy that filled every corner of the house. Everything is a lot, she said. The feelings are loud. The happy is loud. The sad is loud. It was the most insightful thing I had ever heard. We were a family of loud feelings. Mark and I had always prided ourselves on our open communication, our emotional expressiveness. We encouraged our girls to name their feelings, to let them out. But for a child who had survived by making herself small and quiet, our emotional volume must have been overwhelming. A constant, roaring fire she was afraid of getting too close to. Over the next few weeks, we continued the sessions. We learned to listen. Really listen. Not just to the words, but to the silences in between. I learned that my attempts to fill Avery's life with loud, performative happiness were actually drowning out her quiet need for peace and predictability. I had been trying to give her what I thought she should want, what I would have wanted, instead of paying attention to what she was actually showing me she needed. The house changed. The change wasn't dramatic, it was a series of small, quiet shifts. I stopped asking Avery leading questions about her feelings. I stopped trying to orchestrate fun family activities. Instead, I just created a calm, predictable environment. Dinner was at 6:30 every night. The little girls had their story time. Avery had her space. One evening, I found her in the kitchen, looking at the cookbook I had left on the counter. "What are you looking at?" I asked, my voice soft. "This," she said, pointing to a recipe for chocolate lava cakes. "My mom, she used to make these." My heart squeezed. It was the first time she had voluntarily mentioned Jessica in months. "I remember," I said, my voice thick. "She made them for my birthday one year. She was so proud of them." Avery traced the picture with her finger. "Are they hard to make?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I've never tried. But we have all the ingredients. We could try together, if you want." She hesitated for a moment, then gave a small nod. So we made them. It wasn't a loud, happy baking session. It was quiet and focused. I read the instructions, she measured the ingredients. Our hands brushed a few times as we passed the bowl back and forth. We got chocolate on our fingers and flour on the counter. It was messy and imperfect. When the cakes came out of the oven, one of them had collapsed, but the other three were perfect. We sat at the kitchen table, just the two of us, and ate them. Avery took a bite, and a slow, genuine smile spread across her face. Not a forced smile for a camera, but a real one. The kind that reached her eyes. "It tastes just like hers," she said quietly. In that moment, sitting in our messy kitchen, sharing an imperfect dessert, I felt a deeper sense of connection to her than I had in any of the perfectly framed photographs. This was real. This was belonging. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was a shared, quiet memory. The box of photos was still in the attic. I hadn't known what to do with them. Throwing them away felt wrong, but I knew putting them back on the wall was out of the question. One rainy Saturday, an idea came to me. I brought the box down from the attic and opened it on the living room floor. I also got out a big, empty scrapbook, some scissors, and a glue stick. I called all three girls over. "I have an idea," I said. "Let's make a book about our trip to the beach." Lily and Chloe were immediately excited by the prospect of cutting and pasting. I looked at Avery, unsure of how she would react. I dumped all the photos out of the box and onto the rug. The good ones, the blurry ones, the ones with goofy faces, the stiff, posed ones. All of them. "Okay," I said. "The rule is, everyone gets to pick the pictures they want to put in. And you can write or draw anything you want next to them." I handed the scissors to Lily, who immediately started inexpertly cutting around a photo of herself holding a giant seashell. Chloe grabbed a picture of Mark burying her in the sand. I watched Avery. She sifted through the pile of photos slowly. She passed over all the beautiful, professional portraits of herself. Instead, she picked up a blurry photo I had taken with my phone. It was of her, Lily, and Chloe all laughing, their faces squished together in a silly selfie. She had her eyes closed, but she was genuinely laughing. I barely remembered taking it. Then she picked up another one. It was a picture of her feet, standing at the edge of the water as a wave washed over them. "I like this one," she said quietly, holding up the picture of her feet. "Why that one?" I asked, curious. "Because I remember how cold the water was," she said. "It made me feel awake." It was such a simple, profound observation. She wasn't interested in how she looked. She was interested in how she felt. The photos I had discarded as technically imperfect were the ones that held the real memories for her. For the next hour, we all sat on the floor together, cutting and gluing. We created a chaotic, colorful, and completely authentic story of our trip. Lily drew a very crooked sun on a page. Chloe scribbled next to a photo of an ice cream cone. Avery wrote small captions under her chosen photos. Under the selfie, she wrote, "My sisters." Under the picture of her feet in the water, she wrote, "Awake." It was the furthest thing from the pristine, curated wall I had created. It was messy, collaborative, and real. It was our story, told together. And as I watched my 3 daughters working side by side, I knew that this, right here, was what family looked like. Not a perfect picture in a frame, but a work in progress, being created together, one messy, beautiful page at a time. The scrapbook became a living thing in our house. It sat on the coffee table, and someone was always adding to it. Lily and Chloe filled the pages with crayon drawings and stickers, creating vibrant, chaotic landscapes around the photos. Avery, in her quiet way, would sometimes sit with it alone, adding a small, handwritten note or a memory next to a picture. She never chose the professionally shot portraits. She chose the candid, blurry, in-between moments, Mark looking silly with a piece of seaweed on his head, a close-up of a sandcastle before the tide took it, the 3 of them bundled in a single towel, shivering and laughing. The blank wall in the hallway remained blank. At first, it felt like a scar, a reminder of my failure. But over time, it started to feel like something else, a clean slate. A space for a new story to be written, one that we hadn't figured out yet. It was a space of quiet potential, and I was learning to be comfortable with that. Our family therapy sessions continued. We were learning a new language, a new way of being together. Dr. Evans gave us homework. One week, our task was to find a way to honor Jessica's memory as a family, in a way that felt right for everyone. My first instinct was to plan something. A big dinner, a visit to a place she loved. But I stopped myself. The old Sarah would have done that. The new Sarah knew she had to listen first. That night, at dinner, I brought it up. My voice felt a little shaky. This was still a delicate subject. Dr. Evans suggested we think of a way to remember Avery's mom, I said, looking around the table. And I was wondering if any of you had any ideas. Lily and Chloe looked confused, too young to fully grasp the concept. Mark looked at me, a supportive smile on his face. I braced myself for Avery's reaction. I expected her to shut down, to retreat. She was quiet for a long time, pushing a piece of broccoli around her plate. Then she looked up. She loved gardening, Avery said, her voice soft. She wasn't very good at it. Everything always died. But she loved it. A small, sad smile touched my lips. I remember that, I said. She tried to grow tomatoes on her apartment balcony one year and got one, tiny, green tomato. Avery smiled back, a real, genuine smile. She called it her miracle tomato and wouldn't let anyone eat it. It was a shared memory, a small, perfect moment of connection. What if, Mark said, jumping in. What if we started a small garden in the backyard? We could plant whatever you want, Avies. No pressure for it to be good at it. We could just try. Together. Avery's eyes lit up, just for a second, a spark of the little girl she was before the world had hurt her. Yeah, she asked. Could we plant sunflowers? They were her favorite. We can plant a whole field of them if you want, I said, my heart feeling so full it might burst. And so, the following weekend, our new family project began. It was different from the photo project. It wasn't about creating a perfect, static image of happiness. It was about nurturing something living. It was about getting our hands dirty. We went to the nursery and let Avery pick out the seeds. Sunflowers, of course. But also messy, sprawling pumpkins, and some fragrant lavender that I loved. Lily and Chloe were thrilled to be allowed to dig in the dirt. We worked all Saturday afternoon, turning over a small patch of our lawn. Mark built a small raised bed. We amended the soil. We planted the tiny seeds. It was hard work. We got sweaty and dirty. Chloe threw a worm at Lily, which resulted in 5 minutes of screaming. I accidentally overwatered one section. It was chaotic and imperfect and utterly wonderful. Avery worked with a quiet focus, her brow furrowed in concentration as she carefully planted each sunflower seed, giving it the proper spacing, just like the package said. She wasn't the broken girl. She was just a girl, planting a garden with her family. In the weeks that followed, the garden became a new focal point. Every morning, Avery would go out to check on it before school. She was the first to spot the tiny green shoots poking through the soil. Her quiet, "It's growing," was filled with more pride and excitement than I had ever heard in her voice. We were growing, too. The therapy sessions were helping us navigate the tricky dynamics of our blended family. I was learning to manage my own anxiety and guilt, to separate my grief for Jessica from my relationship with her daughter. I was learning that being a good mother to Avery didn't mean replacing her old life, but helping her integrate it into her new one. It meant making space for her grief, for her memories, for her mother. One afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and heard music coming from the living room. It was a piano. A simple, hesitant melody. I walked in to find Avery sitting at the old upright piano that had come with the house. It had sat in the corner for years, mostly used as a surface to collect mail and dust. I stood in the doorway, holding my breath, not wanting to break the spell. She was playing from memory, her fingers moving slowly over the keys, finding the notes. The melody was beautiful, simple and hauntingly sad. She must have sensed my presence, because she stopped. She looked over at me, a blush rising on her cheeks. "Sorry," she mumbled. "I was just messing around." "Don't be sorry," I said, my voice soft. "That was beautiful." "What is it?" "It's just something my dad taught me," she said, looking down at the keys. "He wasn't very good, but he knew this one song." Another piece of her past, offered up so gently. Another crack in the wall. "You have a real talent, Avies," I said. "You know, my friend gives piano lessons. If you were ever interested," I trailed off, catching myself. The old Sarah was rearing her head, trying to turn a beautiful moment into a project, a plan. I took a breath and corrected course. "It was just really lovely to hear," I said simply. "Thank you for playing." I left it at that. I didn't push. I didn't schedule. I just appreciated the moment for what it was, a gift. A few days later, Avery asked me for my friend's phone number. Life found a new rhythm. It wasn't a perfect rhythm. There were still hard days. Days when Avery was distant and sullen. Days when Lily and Chloe's boundless energy felt like a storm battering against Avery's quiet need for calm. There were arguments and misunderstandings. But something fundamental had shifted. We were no longer trying to force a shape onto our family. We were letting it grow into its own. The scrapbook was almost full now, a testament to the messy, joyful, and sometimes sad reality of our lives. The sunflowers in the backyard were taller than Chloe, their heavy heads starting to turn towards the sun. The house no longer felt loud, at least not in the same way. It felt alive. Full of the complex, overlapping music of 5 very different people learning to be a family. The midpoint of our journey wasn't a single, dramatic event. It was a quiet afternoon in late summer. I was sitting on the back porch, watching the girls. Lily and Chloe were running through the sprinklers, their shrieks of laughter filling the air. Mark was grilling burgers, the familiar smell a comfort. Avery was sitting in a lawn chair, reading a book. She wasn't engaging with the chaos, but she wasn't hiding from it either. She was just present, coexisting. A few feet away, the sunflowers stood like tall, silent sentinels, their faces bright yellow against the blue sky. At one point, Chloe, dripping wet, ran over to Avery and threw her arms around her neck in a spontaneous, soggy hug. For a second, Avery stiffened. The old Avery would have pushed her away. But this Avery hesitated, and then, slowly, she wrapped her arms around her little sister and hugged her back. She even laughed a little as Chloe dripped water all over her book. I looked over at Mark, and he was watching it, too. He caught my eye and smiled. It was a small thing. A tiny, fleeting moment. It wasn't a picture you could capture and frame. It wasn't a grand gesture. But it was everything. It was the moment I realized we were going to be okay. We weren't fixed. We weren't perfect. But we were a family. Not because of a declaration I had made or a photo I had hung, but because of 1,000 tiny, patient, ordinary moments of grace. We were learning to live in the unframed, messy, beautiful reality of our life together. The house wasn't just a place she lived anymore. It was finally, truly becoming her home. Autumn arrived in a blaze of gold and crimson, painting the leaves on the trees outside our windows. The sunflowers in our garden, once so vibrant, began to droop their heavy heads, their season over. But instead of feeling sad, it felt like a natural, peaceful transition. We harvested the seeds together, promising to plant them again next year. The act of planning for next year with Avery felt quiet and profound. It wasn't a promise made under duress, but a simple assumption of continuity. Our lives had settled into a rhythm that felt less like a carefully choreographed dance and more like a comfortable, improvised song. The therapy sessions continued, but they became less about crisis management and more about fine-tuning our communication. We were learning to read each other's cues, to respect each other's needs for space and for connection. The bare wall in the hallway was still there. We'd grown so used to it that I barely noticed the nail holes anymore. It was just a part of the house now. One afternoon, Avery came home from school and handed me a piece of paper. It was a flyer for the fall student art show. "My art teacher wants me to submit something," she said, avoiding my eyes. "It's probably stupid." "It's not stupid, Avies. That's amazing," I said, my excitement genuine. "What are you going to submit?" She shrugged. "I don't know. I was working on something. A drawing." Later that week, she showed it to me. It was a charcoal sketch, rendered with a skill that surprised me. It was a drawing of our backyard. In the foreground, 2 small, indistinct figures, clearly Lily and Chloe, were playing. In the background, a single, tall sunflower was depicted in meticulous detail, its face turned towards the sun. The contrast between the blurry motion of the little girls and the sharp focus of the sunflower was stunning. It was a piece full of emotion and quiet observation. It was her world, seen through her eyes. "Avery, this is incredible," I said, my voice filled with awe. "You have to submit this." She allowed a small, proud smile. "Okay," she said. I will. The night of the art show, we all went. The school gymnasium was crowded with proud parents and students. Artwork of every kind covered the walls. We found Avery's piece hanging in a prominent spot. It was simply titled, My Backyard. Standing there, looking at her art, I felt a wave of emotion so powerful it almost knocked me over. She had taken our messy, chaotic, beautiful life and turned it into art. She hadn't just found her place in our family, she was defining it on her own terms, with her own voice. As we were standing there, Lily, in her typical 5-year-old fashion, said loudly, "That's our house. And that's me. And that's Chloe. And that's Avery's flower." A few other parents turned to look. Avery blushed, but she also stood a little taller. Mark put his arm around her shoulders and gave her a squeeze. "We're proud of you, kiddo," he said. It was a perfect evening. On the way home, Avery was quiet, but it was a happy, contented quiet. As we were getting out of the car, she turned to me. "Hey, Mom." The word still caught me off guard every time she used it. It was rare, reserved for moments when she felt completely safe. It landed in my heart like a tiny bird. "Yeah, sweetie. The scrapbook is full," she said. "I was thinking maybe we need another one." My heart swelled. "I think that's a great idea." The climax of our story wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a tearful confession. It was a quiet Saturday morning a few weeks later. The air was crisp, and the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. I had bought a new scrapbook, a beautiful one bound in dark green leather. I had also, on an impulse, bought a simple, large wooden frame. I set the new, empty scrapbook on the living room floor. But I didn't bring out the old box of photos from the attic. This book would be for new memories, for the life we were building now. Instead, I called Avery into the hallway. Mark was there, too. I held up the empty frame. "I was thinking," I said, my voice steady. "This wall has been empty for a long time. And I think it's time we put something here. But this time, it's not my decision. It's a family decision. And I think the first thing that goes up should be chosen by you." I wasn't sure how she would react. I worried for a second that it was too much pressure, that I was falling back into old habits. But her reaction surprised me. She looked at the empty wall, and then at the frame in my hands. She thought for a long, serious moment. "Okay," she said. "I have an idea." She disappeared into her room. I exchanged a nervous glance with Mark. A moment later, she returned. She wasn't holding a photograph. She was holding her drawing, My Backyard. She held it out to me. "This," she said, her voice firm with a newfound confidence. "I want to put this here." I stared at the drawing, and then at her, my vision blurring with tears. It was the most perfect, beautiful, and healing gesture imaginable. She wasn't choosing a picture of her face, an image of herself that I had tried to force upon her. She was choosing her own vision. Her own art. A picture that represented all of us, through her lens. A picture of her home. "I think," I said, my voice choked with emotion, "that is the best idea I have ever heard." The process of framing it became a small, sacred ceremony. Mark got the toolkit. I carefully cleaned the glass. Avery helped me position the drawing perfectly against the mat board. Together, the three of us worked to put it together. Lily and Chloe came to watch, their faces full of curiosity. When it was done, it looked magnificent. The simple wooden frame highlighted the beauty of her charcoal sketch. Mark found a stud in the center of the wall, and with 2 solid taps of the hammer, he hung it up. We all stood back and looked at it. The drawing filled the space completely. It wasn't a picture of a person, it was a picture of a feeling. Of a place. It radiated a sense of peace and belonging that none of my expensive, professional photographs ever could. It was a testament not to a perfect moment, but to the beauty of an ordinary one. It was a symbol of our new foundation, one built not on my frantic efforts, but on our collective, patient work. "It looks good," Avery said, a quiet pride in her voice. "It looks perfect," Mark said, putting an arm around me and an arm around Avery, pulling us into a sideways hug. Lily tugged on my sleeve. "Now can we put up a picture of me?" she asked, her voice hopeful. I laughed, a real, light-hearted laugh. "Yes, sweetie. Now we can. We have a lot of wall space to fill." The spell was broken. The wall was no longer a place of conflict or a symbol of my failure. It was just a wall again, a blank canvas waiting for our family's story to unfold. And this time, we would fill it together. Later that evening, after the little girls were in bed, I was sitting in the living room, reading. Avery came and sat on the other end of the couch. She was practicing the piano now, and the house was often filled with the sound of her hesitant, beautiful melodies. "Hey," she said. "Hey, you." She was quiet for a minute, fiddling with a loose thread on her sweatpants. "I was thinking about my mom today," she said. I put my book down. "Yeah. I think she would have liked the drawing," she said. "She would have said it was better than her miracle tomato." I smiled, a real, deep smile that came from a place of peace. "Yeah, Avies," I said. "I think she would have, too. She would have been so proud of you." I didn't say "I'm so proud of you," though I was. I kept the focus on her mother, on her memory. I was finally learning to be a bridge to her past, not a wall blocking it. She leaned her head back against the couch cushions and closed her eyes, a small, contented smile on her face. In that quiet moment, with the light from the lamp casting a warm glow on her face, and her drawing hanging in the hall as a silent testament to how far we had come, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The frantic need to fix things was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence that we were, in our own messy, imperfect way, already whole. The healing wasn't a destination we had arrived at. It was the journey we were on, together, every single day. The months that followed felt like a long, gentle exhale. The drawing in the hallway became the heart of our home, a quiet anchor that grounded us. We started adding to the wall, slowly and organically. There was no grand plan. One weekend, Lily and Chloe made a colorful finger painting of our family, with 5 stick figures holding hands under a giant rainbow. We framed it and hung it next to Avery's drawing. It was lopsided and messy, and it was perfect. Mark printed a small, candid photo he'd taken on his phone of me and Avery in the kitchen, covered in flour, laughing as we looked at our collapsed lava cake. He put it in a small frame and added it to the collection. Avery chose a picture of her piano sheet music for the song her father had taught her and mounted it on a simple piece of cardstock. The wall was becoming a mosaic of our real life, a collection of inside jokes and quiet memories. It wasn't for anyone else, it was for us. One of the biggest changes was in me. The frantic energy I used to pour into manufacturing happiness was now channeled into simply being present. I learned to find joy not in the big, orchestrated events, but in the small, everyday moments. The way Chloe's hair curled behind her ears. The serious expression on Lily's face when she was concentrating on a puzzle. The sound of Avery's piano scales drifting through the house. My guilt about Jessica never truly went away. It was a part of me, a scar on my heart that would always remain. But it no longer drove me. I came to understand that the best way to honor my friend was not to try and erase the past or build a perfect shrine to it, but to love her daughter well. And loving her well meant loving all of her, her grief, her resilience, her quiet strength, and her prickly armor. It meant giving her a safe, stable home where she could be exactly who she was. As Avery approached her 13th birthday, a new kind of confidence began to bloom in her. She started spending more time out of her room, joining Mark to watch sports documentaries or sitting with me in the kitchen while I cooked, telling me about her day. She made a couple of friends at school, girls from her art class who shared her quiet, observant nature. For the first time, she asked if one of them could come over. It felt like a monumental step. The day before her birthday, she came to me with a request. For my birthday, she said, her voice hesitant but determined, I don't really want a party. But I was wondering. Could we go to the coast? Just for the day. Back to Seaside Pines. My heart did a little flip. That place held so many complicated memories. The forced smiles, the tense photo shoot, the beginning of our biggest crisis. Of course, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Are you sure? We don't have to go there if it brings up bad feelings. She shook her head. No, she said, looking me straight in the eye. I want to. I want to make a new memory there. So the next day, the 5 of us piled into the car. The drive felt different this time. It was lighter, filled with easy chatter and silly songs. When we arrived, the familiar salty air filled my lungs. The beach was just as rugged and beautiful as I remembered. We didn't have a plan. We didn't have a photographer. We just walked. We flew a kite. The girls ran from the waves. This time, Avery ran with them. Her laughter, free and uninhibited, was carried on the wind, and it was the most beautiful sound in the world. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Avery walked over to me. She had my old camera in her hand, the one I had taken on that first trip. Hey, she said. Will you take a picture of me? I stared at her, stunned into silence. She had never, not once, asked for her picture to be taken. Right here, she said, pointing to a spot by the water's edge, where the waves were lapping at the shore. The golden light was hitting her perfectly, making her hair shine. I took the camera, my hand steady. I raised it to my eye. She stood there, not posing, not smiling for me, just looking out at the ocean. She looked peaceful. She looked strong. She looked like a girl who knew who she was and where she belonged. I took the picture. Can I see? She asked. I showed her the image on the small screen. She studied it for a moment, then nodded. I like that one, she said. Then she did something that completely floored me. She turned the camera around. Okay, she said. Your turn. Get with Dad and the girls. I was so surprised, I could only stammer, what? I want to take a picture of you guys, she said, a small, teasing smile on her lips. Try not to look all weird and posed. Mark laughed, pulling me and the little girls into a huddle. We made goofy faces. We were windblown and sandy and imperfect. Avery snapped the photo. Perfect, she declared, looking at the screen with satisfaction. Later, as we sat around a small bonfire on the beach, roasting marshmallows, Avery leaned her head on my shoulder. It was a casual, easy gesture, one that had become more common over the months. Thanks for today, she whispered. Thank you for suggesting it, I whispered back. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance against the darkening sky. The past year had been a journey through a storm, but we had come out the other side. Not unscathed, but stronger. We were a family forged in fire, our bonds tested and proven. We were a messy, complicated, beautiful work in progress. A few days later, I had the photos from our beach trip printed. Just a few 4x6s. I laid them on the kitchen table. One was the picture I took of Avery, looking out at the ocean. The other was the picture she took of the rest of us, goofy and happy. That evening, Avery came and stood beside me, looking at the 2 photos. The wall still has some empty spots, I said casually. She looked at me, and her eyes were bright and clear. The old, haunted look was gone, replaced by a quiet, resilient light. She picked up the 2 pictures. Yeah, she said. I think I know just where these should go. Together, we walked into the hallway. The wall was no longer a source of pain or a monument to my mistakes. It was our living history, a testament to our journey. It told the story of a family that had learned the most important lesson of all: belonging isn't something you can frame and hang on a wall. It's something you build, day by day, in the small, quiet, unframed moments of a life shared together. It's a messy, imperfect, and breathtakingly beautiful work of art. And ours was just getting started.